itself.
Okay. Kendra, Kendria, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you had the outline of what needed to be filled out. Do you want to kind of guide the conversation using that? And I mean, you can even go so far as just reading it word for word in order to inform the discussion, so that the time that we do use is focused on accomplishing the bullet points of what we need to talk about.
Yeah, let me pull that up really quick.
And I've started the recording and the timer.
So, bullet number one is basically asking us to define sexual harassment and discuss applicable laws such as Civil Rights Act of 1964, and how does this state law in your state address sexual harassment?
Okay, well, by definition, going off of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination that violates the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this involves employees that are uh, of 15 and more, including state and local governments, as it applies to employment agencies or labor organizations, as well as federal government.
And I've pulled up on a lawyer's um, website, like it's their definition of what sexual harassment is in California. And it includes but is not limited to derogatory comments, slurs, epithets, or jokes, unwanted touching, such as back rubs, pats on the butt, pinching, or accidental brushes, unwanted sexual propositions, discussion of sexual acts, offer of employment or other benefits in exchange for sexual favors, a threat to reduce your hours, benefits, rate of pay, or otherwise hurt your conditions of employment if you don't comply with a sexual request, loss of employment, benefits, or other adverse impacts after complaining about such harassment, leering or rude gestures, someone displaying or giving you sexually suggestive objects, pictures, cartoons, or posters, graphic comments, sexually degrading words, sexually suggestive or obscene messages or invitations, or someone impeding or blocking your movements.
I agree with all that. That's what my notes. That's what I have on sexual harassment. Um, I guess in regards to how your state law addresses it, did we address that, or is it asking how does our state deal with it? Like, what are the repercussions?
Yeah, the state level law is under the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, or FEHA. It's considered the primary source of sexual harassment law. And then we've already discussed Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which covers it on the federal level.
And to kind of piggyback on what you had said earlier about the actual type of act that it entails, um, it also discusses sexual harassment can occur in a variety of circumstances, including but not limited to the following: the victim, as well as the harasser, may be a woman or man. The victim does not have to be of the opposite sex. The harasser can be the victim's supervisor and agent of the employer, a supervisor in another area, a coworker, or non-employee. The victim does not have to be a person harassed, but could be anyone affected by the offensive conduct. Um, Unlawful sexual harassment may occur when economic injury to or discharge of the victim. The harasser conduct must be unwelcome.
Also, also reading this from Auditor Law. It says that both the federal and state laws recognize two general types of sexual harassment: quid pro quo and hostile work environment. Quid pro quo is this for that, so it's where something is offered or taken away or threatened to be taken away as a result of some other such action. And then hostile work environment is basically covers any other version of it. So that would be like sharing pictures or jokes or what have you, where nothing is expected in return, but the act itself is still intimidating, hostile, or offensive.
So, do you guys feel that we touched on that topic? Well, the first bullet point. Are you okay to move on to the second one?
I think so.
Okay, so I'm going to read off. Um, the second bullet is saying to discuss a recent sexual harassment claim in the news and whether media coverage is beneficial or detrimental to reporting and reducing sexual harassment claims in the workplace. Should sexual harassment claims be addressed publicly or handled privately?
And this is a question that is meant to be answered, um, or are we looking for a objective answer?
I think it's like a two-part question, so maybe I can ask the first part and then ask part two after we've touched on part one, if if that's better.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, at this point, we're 7 minutes in. Not that everything's about how long we have to go, but she does want a 45-minute recording or more.
That's fine. So we'll just touch on the first part. So it says to discuss recent sexual harassment claims that have been made in the news, um, and she wants to know if the media coverage has been beneficial or detrimental to reporting and reducing sexual harassment claims in the workplace. So, pretty much, when people go to the media and the media advertises what's going on, does this hurt the workplace or does the workplace benefit from stuff like this?
I think it really depends on what the fallout is of the media effect. So, I mean, obviously, keeping something secret is not good, but keeping something private can be. Um, I, I have a hard time answering the question because I haven't seen a great effect from all the things that have come out over the past few years on my workplace because my company is pretty small and nothing was really affected by any of it. Plus, I feel like we're pretty on board with proper etiquette anyway.
I feel like there's such a thin line sometimes with, small companies or big companies. Um, I went from working at a company that had, I would say maybe like 700 employees to maybe like 125 employees now where I'm currently employed. And I guess because you work in smaller departments, so you guys are always up under each other, people tend to get more comfortable fast. And like the stuff that I hear, I guess because I was in the military, stuff doesn't really bother me, but it's like I can't believe people are that open discussing stuff like this at work, like we're at home. And I don't know, it blows my mind sometimes, the stuff that I hear at work.
I think in my experience, um, sometimes it takes experiencing something going poorly, so like sexual harassment occurring, and then there being a fallout from it on an individual basis for the company before real methods of stopping it come into play?
Definitely, I agree.
Does anybody else have different experiences or statements about the things that have been said?
Uh, uh,
We can't hear you, Daryl.
It's super quiet. If you could somehow turn up your input.
oh well, he was figuring that out. At my workplace, I think what's funny is recently this guy uploaded a video. He's trying to set up his own little YouTube deal, but I follow him. He's a lead, um, and he was talking about basically kind of a joke type post, but he said that this woman, or not sure who, but he was explaining how she just keeps telling him and he's handsome, and they titled it his sexual harassment, or I'm going to HR. I can't remember which, but he just keeps saying, "I know I'm handsome," and it ends up being a joke, but something like that could be, you know, um, him putting it out there kind of in the social media, and then there be repercussions, or maybe he wants to blow himself up to get, a little bit more famous and cause that. So in his case, maybe just a joke, but it could make him boost his followers or something like that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Um, Sometimes, and I think what it comes down to too is the in order for it to fall into sexual harassment, once it goes like if it ever goes to court, they have two legal tests um, about whether it qualifies as a hostile work environment, um, because it has to be um, both objectively offensive, hostile, or abusive, and then on top of that, it has to have come to the point of causing the victim some sort of emotional distress. And that's subjective. So if someone feels that it has caused them emotional distress, then it's pretty much that part is fulfilled. But the other part is a little trickier because um, a reasonable person who works for one company in one environment might be different from a reasonable person that works for another company or environment. Um, like Kendria was saying, when I was in the military, like you learn to shut yourself off when you go home because otherwise people look at you like you're insane, because of the things that come out of your mouth.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, I mean, you have to have that filter where you did normally when you had that rank to pull on people to be able to pretty much say whatever you wanted. And that's one of the challenges that I have at work, where I have a lead that's, or a lot of prior military at work, where people are, have a tough time in those leadership roles without the stripes, just with the name, thinking that that's what's going to get them that respect.
So we're approaching one third of our time. How are we doing on the bullets? How many do we have left, and what's the next one?
Can you guys hear me now?
There he is. Did you want to share something about this bullet point before we move on?
No, I just want, well, kind of about the military thing. What Ernie was saying, a lot of the, I don't know if he was going at this, but a lot of the guys that they had the rank or have the rank in the military, they, when they, I don't know, repeat that one more time. What you said, Ernie, please.
Well, it was kind of more off on a tangent than covering the bullet, but as long as the way that it applies to more of the leadership and the way you talk to people and having to, you know, and almost to a sexual harassment level in the military maybe, and then when you transition into the civilian sector, not having that rank to kind of pull and kind of protect you from saying some of those words or conversations.
Okay. So, what is the next bullet point or question?
Well, the second half of the question was, should sexual harassment claims be addressed publicly or handled privately? I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, sorry, Daryl.
That's all right. Um, I would say it just depends on who it will affect. I think publicly, I know in the military, when I was in the military, they did a lot of things publicly to deter it from happening again so other people can see. It's more like a training type thing. So, on one end, I say it should be public, especially the higher people, the executives, if they commit something, um, I think it should be publicized so that it can show others that nobody is above the rules, the laws, or whatever.
I can agree with that.
When I was in the Marine Corps, and this pertained to reports of sexual harassment and sexual assault. And basically, if it was sexual harassment, they were willing to handle it privately if that's how the person who was reporting it wanted to handle it. And that would limit them as to how much punishment that they could put out. But um, if something was ever sexual assault, which I know we're not talking about, then it instantly had to go public. Um, Whereas with sexual harassment, it was dependent more on the victim, and whether they wanted it to be public or not. And so I think as long as it's clearly defined in company documents how things will be handled, I think that leaving it up to the victim may be the best approach since it does depend on the situation.
I could actually touch on a situation where it was kind of borderline, and I think privately or that can keep it to where it's affects less people, especially if it's a one-time situation. And in this case, it was, and it was handled at the lowest level, so it cost the least amount of money, least amount of everybody's time. It was a situation where um, some person was cutting out some foam basically for inserting tools, and it was for a pair of scissors, so that you can tell that the scissors are missing. People that are in the military, the toolboxes are that way, and we were doing it at work. It's part of the Lean project program, and basically, when he pulled out the insert of the scissors, the trash, he stuck it on the. It looked like man's genitals, so he stuck it on the like cubicle as a joke, but he forgot to take it down. And when he the next shift that was oncoming saw it there, and it was a couple of female inspectors, and they were just pretty much took it the wrong way. They actually let me know about it, and the guy didn't mean nothing by it. I went to HR. They let me know that, as long as both parties agree on, what basically I sought out apology and made sure that the guy was, you know, definitely didn't do it, on purpose. And we actually settled it with basically apology letter and discussion with that person. So in that case, I think it would benefit doing it privately.
I pasted the um, website that I've been reading from for the California stuff. But once we're done, I can also put it in the group email or the group text.
I'm bouncing. Gonna be honest, I'm bouncing in between two assignments. I'm making notes in regards to what we are all talking about, the different points we are all bringing up, the stuff that we agree on, didn't agree on, and stuff like that. And all together, I'm just gonna combine it, and I'm pretty sure that we'll hit the. Is it 300 or 500 words that we
She
are?
she
It's
changed it to
500
5.
in.
Okay. Well, after I have under each bullet, I did like just a like small paragraph, and I'll expand on it later. But as we go, I'm just making small notes, and just so we can kind of hurry up and get this over with.
No, I get it. Are we good on this bullet point, or does anyone have something else to add?
I'm good.
All right. What's next? What was the next item?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can't hear.
Sorry. Um, Basically, just want to know: does your answer change if the allegation is a widely known scandal making the front page news? Does your morals change? Um, and she wants us to explain the ethical and legal considerations of a business protecting its employees while undergoing a sexual harassment investigation.
I think the temptation is for companies to change how they handle things when stuff goes public because they don't want to be viewed as taking it easy on someone, or potentially they don't want to be viewed as executing someone for doing something seemingly meaningless. But at the same time, I think it's in the company's best interest, and more so in the employee's best interest, for the company to keep things like that internal, unless again there's a reason to take them public other than media coverage.
In my organization, I've seen the protection of both the victim and the person doing it, and it's rare to for me to hear any accusations ever having occurred. I've been in some meetings where it's not even a 5 second conversation, and I personally think it's a little bit unfair, and it's unfair to the organization because it kind of shows that they don't care or it's not as important as other subjects at work, I guess, where the output's more important than the person itself.
When you say that, are you talking about like people going too easy on people, or is it internal versus external, um, private versus public? Which part are you referring to that that you feel isn't serving the best interests of the people involved?
I don't feel it's a good idea not for the information not to go public because for one, I guess the public opinion can change about it and there's less confidence in the system working. So I'm of the opinion that whether it be a small incident or a large incident, it should go public. But if the victim doesn't want their information to be out, I think some details like names could be changed.
Okay, so perhaps a situation where initially it's handled privately, but then the results are made public in like a town hall meeting or a paper to the whole company to read, or like a memo or whatever.
Yeah, or any you know, pretty much EO training. I know for me, I'm like I guess I'm in the gray area, being in the National Guard and being a federal employee. We have a little bit of both worlds where our EO training is kind of a joke where we just watched a pre-recorded, 5-10 minute video that was made about 10 years ago, and I don't feel it working. I don't know how to explain it, but I don't see that it's a good thing for stuff like this to be private.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it should be private because um, just well, I guess it depends on how big the issue is and how big it can get because you don't want your company to be considered that they're withholding information from the public or I think you need to be open about everything. Um, I think that's the it's the best for the victim and the best for the person that I mean probably not the best for the little embarrassment for the person who did it. However, I think it's best to be transparent about everything.
Okay. And does that change? I think getting back to the original question, does that change when there's more media coverage, or does it stay the same, or does it become even more important to take it public?
I think depending on like if you were just somebody who kind of witnessed something, it all depends on how fast and how hard stuff is going to hit the fan. For example, if you knew like somebody was kind of making inappropriate you know innuendos to somebody, but they kind of got that person kind of got fed up with it, took it to HR, and then they're not satisfied with the results that HR gave them, so they go ahead and lawyer up. Well, I would kind of, at first, I guess initially I would kind of want to keep to myself, but morally, I know that that person shouldn't have to feel like that at work, so I would want to speak out and testify, but that is a long process to go through, you know, and I can kind of understand why people would want to probably pull back and not be involved with the investigation or try to help that person if I'm going in the right direction with this. I guess the question was asking um, about us all being involved with it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. What could you restate the question that was from the paper?
So it was saying explain ethical and legal considerations of a business protecting its employees, the accuser, the accused, and other employees in the company. While in the workplace, sexual harassment, while in the workplace, sexual harassment investigation is underway. Does your answer, does your answer change is if the allegation is widely known, um, is a widely known scandal making the front page news? Like some people don't want to be, slammed on the front page of, a messy article or well known, like the Inquirer or, those other messy ones where they can pretty much say anything they want, make up any story they want, and, take it whatever direction they want.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, especially in modern media, where we're talking about, clicks and views, you have a situation where there are sites and quote unquote news groups that will go with a story and that'll get the clicks and the views, and then they'll print a retraction or they'll make an edit or whatever. But at that point, the first version of the truth or the first version of events is already out there, and it's kind of hard to get that back. So, again, with the California Code of Regulations, they require employers, when it comes to the sexual harassment, they have to handle the complaint properly, provide as much confidentiality as possible, respond to the person complaining, ensure that the complaint is investigated by qualified personnel, document the investigation, and provide track the progress of the complaint and the outcome, take appropriate remedial actions, and ensure timely closure. So, one key bullet point having to do with what we just talked about is that California law requires that they provide as much confidentiality as possible. And that would, I think, lean to keeping it internal as much as you can.
Just wanted to say that that goes hand in hand, like that example that I was trying to give, saying that the the accuser can feel like HR didn't do didn't meet their um, expectation of how handling the situation. So they're like, this isn't enough. I still don't feel comfortable when I come to work. Everybody's staring at me now, or the story kind of got out about what happened. So now, like, there goes the emotional distress and stuff and things of that nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, at that point in time, the company does open themselves up to litigation by the victim, because if they didn't handle it properly and they didn't document it properly and all these other parts of what's required by employers or required of employers, um, then obviously the company is open to being sued themselves, not only whatever legal proceedings may happen for the person who's being accused.
I'm just typing up notes. You guys keep talking.
What's the next bullet point?
So the next bullet point says, compare the sexual harassment liability of a business entity that is sole proprietorship with an entity that is a corporation.
Okay. Well, actually, again, this lawyer website is providing all the ammunition. The next bullet point on theirs is who is liable for California sexual harassment claims. And it states that under California law, an employee who is the perpetrator of harassment is personally liable for damages to their victim, regardless of whether or not the employer knew or should have known about the harassment. Employers are held strictly liable if the harassment was at the hands of a supervisor, or if the perpetrator of the harassment was the supervisor. So, meaning if leadership's involved, that's when the company becomes liable. But if it was an employee and an employee, and there was no supervisor in the situation, then the employee is personally liable for damages to the victim.
Can you send me those? Can you send me those articles,
Yeah,
please?
I can. It's linked in the Discord chat, but I can send it to you through the email as well. The next portion of that also says that in addition, the employer is liable for damages if they knew or should have known about the harassment and failed to take immediate and appropriate corrective action to remedy it. So that previous part, where even if they knew about it, the employee is responsible, that then becomes the responsibility of the employer if they fail to take immediate and appropriate corrective action.
Yeah, I did read something on that the EEOC Commission website case along those lines where the guy who did the sexual harassment part um, actually didn't work for the company anymore. But since the organization did fail to do anything about it, they were still on the hook, and they just kept passing the buck from one person to another. They ended up having to pay $180,000 in damages, and also have to offer a promotion to this one person that she was passed up because she was a female in a male like dominant organization.
Gotcha. So basically, was it a situation where she was like held back because she was not like was she being harassed, or was it more of a sexual or rather gender discrimination situation?
Uh, she had a record of everything. It was actually a little bit of everything because then she had placed a sexual harassment complaint, and she actually got reprisal from that complaint, and that's what caused her to cause a hostile work environment, and pretty much just the organization's failure to provide a decent working place.
Roger. That sounds like another good source. Um, if you could send that, did you want to send that to Kendria? Just that way we have our references in order.
Yes, please send me whatever links you guys are reading from. Um, it'll make it easier to go back to support the little notes that I have. Please, thanks.
Okay. How are we doing on percentage of the bullet points? How much do we have left?
I'm gonna get with you on comparing the liability, um, the last bullet point that we just left off on. This moving on, we're on our last bullet point, which is going to be recommending risk management procedures to a business, how they can implement and avoid or reduce sexual harassment claims from occurring in the workplace. So, pretty much, how do we stop stuff like this from happening? What stuff are we going to have in place to deter these actions from happening?
Well, I was discussing earlier before I believe we're recording, but um, I think in risk management, obviously the normal training and at my work they actually make you have to. It's a computer based training. That's just the initial training that you get, but it's an hour long, and you have to actually be logged on and active on it, and takes you through all the scenarios, and you got to answer a quiz. So some of the gray areas it covers it pretty good, but I think that's probably the foundation of our policies and how to follow them.
Yeah, I agree. The training I know in the military and federal wise over at the VA where I work at, they do have the required training either quarterly or once a year. Even though the things still happen, um, I think the training does bring it down a little bit.
Yeah, California again has certain standards. Um, Employers must ensure that all employees have received a copy of the clearly defined policy when it comes to sexual harassment. They can do it by sending a printed copy. They can do it by sending an email with an acknowledgement return form. But they have to get signatures from every single employee or acknowledgement forms from every single employee in order to basically cover their own butt in provide that proper training or proper awareness of policy. Um, and it also states that if there's 10% or more of non-English speaking personnel at a company, then they have to provide a translation. And for companies that have 50 or more employees, they also have to provide uh, sexual harassment training to supervisors within 6 months of them becoming a supervisor. And that training must be repeated every 1 to 2 years, or at least every 2 years, rather.
I know for ours it's annual, and it's pretty like I said, it's interactive, but it's kind of almost like a gut check because as you get closer to and you've have a few years in a company, and you get closer to employees, like somebody touched on when it's a smaller company. Certain things you get comfortable with. This kind of almost like a reset. Like, hey, you got to almost kind of tone it back a little bit once a year.
Yeah, I think that's still a really good standard, and I've experienced that myself where uh, we all got used to something and then we do a training on it and we're like, oh yeah, we can't do that. And it doesn't necessarily always have to do with sexual harassment, but I've had it to do with like safety or. Um, but the refreshment of training is important because you get comfortable with doing things a certain way, even if it's the wrong way.
I feel like once a year isn't enough. I feel like it should be every 6 months for everybody. Not so much, in depth or make it death by PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be like a 2 hour training, but just a reminder that, you kind of have to keep yourself in check. And what you do at home, you can't do, in a workplace because you never know what will offend somebody or how things can play out for you. And you don't want to find yourself in a lawsuit or put your company in a lawsuit in your job and risk your what you have going on for your home, your family, and things of that nature. So I kind of feel it should be every 6 months.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity if in that kind of situation to have two different kinds of training, even. I mean, for a company who's serious about limiting their liability, everybody knows, I think everybody understands that not everybody receives training the same way and not everybody has the same memory um, when it comes to training. So if you had like active required training once a year or once every 2 years, but then also had every 6 months a follow up, hey, here's 10 questions about sexual harassment, answer them right, or you have to take training.
I agree. When you have something like that, kind of micromanaging, something like that, keeping everybody in check, that could help keep stuff like that from happening.
Yeah, and again, if we're talking about limiting the company's liability, if you have an incident occur and that person completed training 3 months ago to say, hey, here's the right way to do things, that's very different from a year and a half ago.
I agree. Um, Somebody needs to be there to make sure that they're keeping up with updated laws or proper protocol and procedures and things of that nature. You don't want to be operating off the 90s, and we're in a whole different time.
Yep. We've got about a minute and change left of recording. Are there any final notes or remarks that people want to say? Um, or and then also remember to send any links. Is email most convenient for you, Kendria, for links to people's sources?
Yes, please send me, if you could send me just a small little note about about what link you're emailing me about, so I can kind of go in there and just grab the information and put it in whatever section I have to. That would be great. But yes, email is perfect. Thank you.
Okay, to I guess just add another point to the risk management part of it. That was the last bullet point, I believe. I think making sure that you have, equal opportunity for events for the different, I guess, uh, types of groups, and events that make it available for everybody. So it's not, I guess that would be maybe more discrimination, but uh,
Yeah, no, I mean that's valid because really it's all under the same law. I mean, yeah, it's covering different things to be sure, but I think that sexual harassment and equal opportunity and discrimination can all kind of go hand in hand, and usually they're found in the same kind of environments.
I think that kind of keeping that workplace, um, just remembering that work is work. Like I know we have our friends at work and things of that nature, but I kind of like to keep things work related unless, if we're at, say, if I had those coworkers we go to a bar with, then okay, I know I can unwind a little bit. And so do my coworkers. They feel that way too. But just to cover your own butt, it would just be safe to keep things, work at work. And if you develop, you can't, you kind of can't help who you develop relationships with at work. Um, it's not against the law to be friends and things of that nature, but you just, you want to keep work and keep it respectful at all times.
Yeah, a personal measure I've taken, and this doesn't have any backing in any kind of legal or logical sense, but I just don't uh, have I don't add friends to my social media from work until I no longer work at the company. Um, that's just a personal line that I've drawn because I'm like, I don't want you to think of me as my whole person. I just want you to know who I am at work.
I am I am the same way. Don't ask me for my social media. I don't have a Facebook at all, but Instagram, Snapchat, all that. Don't even ask for it.
All right, we have fulfilled the time requirement. Are there any other remarks that people want to make before I? Oh, all right. Is that a good place to stop?
I agree.
Hey,
sounds good to me.
I'm sorry.
I think they're letting us know it's over.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah,
Anybody hear me now?
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. I'm sorry. I had to go to Starbucks.
You had to go to
Right,
Starbucks.
what? You had to go to Starbucks.
Wi-Fi. I had
Oh,
stuff
okay,
to
I
do.
was like, what?
Yeah,
You had to get coffee?
yeah. I'm having problems with my
Okay.
internet service. AT&T's kind of, so I had to go to Wi-Fi.
All right. Well, um, if you want, I can. Once I have the complete file, I will send it to the group in the email, or at least a link to it where I've posted it. That way, if anyone wants to reference the recording, they can. And then when we come to class, I'll have a link for the teacher as well.
You don't want to have him comment on the last question, so the instructor gives him credit for being in the.
That's
Yeah.
fine. Do you want to repeat the last question for him?
Yeah. So the last question was just basically asking what recommendation, I'm sorry, recommend risk management procedures to a business and how they can implement to avoid or reduce sexual harassment claims from occurring in a workplace.
How to reduce sexual assault occurring in the workplace?
Correct.
Um, I mean, everybody in the military knows. Say quarterly sharp training, or something equivalent to that. Yeah, quarterly training in the workforce. I mean, different organizations. I would say that they probably would experience that a little bit more frequently. I mean, normally, yeah, when I was in service, I want to say it would be like something every couple of months. We'd have a little refreshers training, which they would select people randomly, things like that. But based on other organizations, I'd say every 6 months we can do it to help reduce uh, that happening. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. I wasn't sure because I wasn't hearing anything, so I was like, okay, can y'all hear me? Just making sure.
That's a good idea. You said to more frequently train and select random people throughout the year on top of the every 6 months. That's
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how they would do it. That way, you can by randomly selecting people, it's like it's not gonna like take up everyone's time. So then people can still work, and it's still it can be like it's not because we're selecting you because of X Y Z or anybody gets a bad vibe from you. It's just it's just all picked at random.
okay. Sounds good to me. What do you guys think?
I think what we did cover, we covered well, and like you said, we did cover all the bullet points.
Okay, I'm happy with it. We gave Sutton a chance to chime in. So if you guys are good with it,
I'm good.
All right,
Yep.
I'm gonna
I'm good with it.
stopping the
Are you
recording now.
are you going to submit the voice recording